All right, this pardon me. This video is going to cover chapter 18 of building vocabulary skills. If you want to follow along in your book, you can do so. It's on page 106. So here's the words. I'll just go through and read them, and you can take a guess at the parts of speech. Data, inept, innate. That one's going to trick you because it's the opposite of what we've taught. Intervene, lament, morbid, obstinate, parallel, perceptive, and sedate. And that's another one that's the opposite of what we've been talking about. So let's move on to the first one here, data. Marva considers the available data on a car, including its fuel economy, safety, and repair record, before deciding whether to buy it. Jane Goodall collected important data on chimpanzees by observing them in the wild. So data means information. On page 107, data is number 5. It's information gathered for study or a decision. My guess is that most of you are fairly familiar with this word. The one interesting thing that I would add is that data is actually a plural form of the verb. The singular is datum. You will very, very rarely hear that. But data is actually a plural form of the word. Okay, next one here is inept, and this is an adjective. I'm so inept at carpentry that in my hand a hammer is a dangerous weapon. Since the actress was inept at playing comic characters, she had decided to try out only for dramatic roles. Inept means unskilled. On page 107, it's number 9, clumsy or unskillful. So inept means that you're not good at something, but you're not good at it in an almost humorous way because you're so unskilled at it, or you're so ungraceful at doing it, that in some sense there's a little bit of humor to it. So if we take the first one, right, she says or he says, I'm so inept at carpentry. In my hand, a hammer is a dangerous weapon. It's like I'm so bad at carpentry, which means like repairing furniture or wood things. That things can be dangerous if they have the hammer in their hand. In the second one, she was so inept. In that case, what it really means is that she was so bad at doing something that it's not even worth trying to do. All right. So the next one is innate. And this one's actually an adjective, although it should sound init if that was following our rule, but it doesn't. Rick's musical ability must be innate. Even as a young child, he could play the piano by ear and make up his own songs. Psychologists try to learn which of our abilities and interests are innate and which of them we gain through experience. An innate is present at birth. On page 107, it is number 6, possessed at birth, inborn. So innate has this idea that it's something that it's often used to talk about abilities that we're born with, meaning that these aren't things that we had to work at or study, but it's just something that we're naturally good at. So in the first one, his musical ability was innate. Meaning he didn't need to be taught how to play the piano. He could just hear something and figure it out. Probably he needed to be taught a little bit, but some people just have a natural ability to make or to play music. One of the interesting things that sometimes people talk about is the difference between nature and nurture. So what that means is that are you the person you are because of your biology, because of your DNA, or are you the person you are because of how you were brought up? And there's interesting studies about that. That there's a lot of innate characteristics or abilities or interests that people have, so that you have maybe you have a twin, two twins who are separated at birth, and they grow up in totally different places, but then they end up having many of the same interests because there was something innate in them, that these interests were somehow in them from the very beginning. So our next word here is intervene. And this is a verb. The two boxers would have killed each other if the referee hadn't finally intervened. When my brothers argue, I get out of the way rather than trying to intervene. So intervene means come between. So this one, inter, means between. So on page 107, intervenes number 1, to come between in order to influence an action, an argument, etc. So in the first example, we have two people who are fighting, and then a third person intervenes, meaning that they're getting in the way and they're stopping the fighting. In the second one, we have an argument between the two brothers, and here's saying, I get out of the way rather than intervene. So instead of coming in between the middle of the argument, the person stays out. So what intervene really means is that you're getting in to break something up. Normally you're intervening in a situation where things are bad, and so a third party comes in to try and fix some sort of conflict between two people or two countries or two groups of people. All right, our next one here is lament, and this one's a verb. When her mother died, Evelyn lamented her passing for weeks, crying every day. Blues songs lament loneliness, sadness, and the hardships of life, rather than celebrating happy situations. And lament means to mourn. Now you may not know what the word mourn means, which is a bit of a problem, but if you remember in the article that we were looking at in class, when they were talking about mourning the attacks in Paris. So mourning means that you're feeling sad about something that happened in the past. So on page 107, mourn is actually number. I'm sorry, lament is number 7, and it says to express sorrow for or about, mourn for. So in the first one, Evelyn is mourning her or lamenting her mother's death. She's feeling sad about and thinking about the death of her mother. In the second one, blues songs, it's this type of music, and the music tends to talk about people being lonely or sad or having hard times. So lament is when you're feeling sad about something that has happened to you in the past, or something that didn't happen to you in the past, but it means that you're feeling bad about the loss. So the next one's morbid. Morbid is an adjective. Great comedians can turn a topic as morbid as murder into a source of laughter. On Halloween, sweet little Nickie chose a morbid costume, a disgusting-looking monster with a bloody hand and a hatchet. And morbid, in this case, is horrible. But one of the things we want to add about morbid is that morbid is often associated with death or violence. So in the first one, we're talking about morbid as murder. Murder is obviously involving death. In the second one, the morbid costume is a monster that has a bloody hand and a hatchet, which sort of indicates that that the monster has just killed someone with the axe, and his hand is bloody or her hand is bloody because of the murder. On page 107, morbid is number 8. Shocking and disgusting, horrible and gruesome. Okay, but again, the focus here about morbid is the shocking and the disgustingness is normally associated with murder or death, rather than other things that would be horrible or disgusting. So the next one is obstinate, and this is an adjective. It actually does follow our rules in that the last syllable is it rather than ate. No matter how much I urged him, Andrew remained obstinate. He refused to make up with Linnell, who was once his best friend. My father is usually very obstinate, but not with his sister, who is even more stubborn than he is. And obstinate means stubborn. On page 107, that's the only definition it gives, is stubborn as well. But obstinate means that you're unwilling to change your mind. that you're going to, there's an expression in English where you say you stick to your guns, meaning that you have your opinion and you stick with it regardless of what opposition is coming your way. One of the ways that I remember this word is I think of the word obstacle, and remember that obstacle is something that is in the way. So I think that a person who is obstinate means that they're stuck in their situation and they're in the way of someone who's trying to change them. So in this first one, I'm urging Andrew to do something to make up with his friend, but he refuses to rekindle that friendship. But obstinate has this meaning of being very stubborn. Parallel, and this is an adjective. To make the stripes he was painting parallel, Alexei measured to be sure there were exactly 3 inches between them at the top, middle, and bottom. Parallel lines run alongside each other but never meet. And so parallel means apart at equal distance at every point. So on page 107, it's number 3, the same distance apart at every point. The time when most of us are introduced to this word in our language, or at least when I was introduced to it, is when you're studying geometry and you talk about parallel lines. And parallel lines are lines that run right next to each other, but they never touch each other. They'll keep on going no matter how far they go. They'll never touch each other because they're running in the same direction. If lines aren't parallel, eventually they're going to cross each other. But we often use parallel to mean not to mean exactly apart in this way, but we can also say, that if you said we had parallel lives, what that would mean is that around the same time in my life that I got married, you got married. Around the same time I had kids, you had kids. Around the same time, I got a new job, you got a new job. So in this case, parallel means that things in someone's life are happening at the same time in roughly the same way is another meaning of it. So our next one here is perceptive, and this is an adjective. Children are more perceptive than many people think. They can usually sense their parents' moods and know whether or not it's a good time to ask for something. Professor Banks is very perceptive. She always seems to know which of her students are under unusual stress. And perceptive means aware. It's number 4 on page 107, understanding and insightful, observant, aware. So perceptive is related to the word perceive, and perceive means to see something or to notice something. So someone who's perceptive is a person who's very good at noticing things, and by this we mean noticing things that maybe most people wouldn't notice. So in the first one, a lot of times we think that children don't really understand what's going on. But they tend to be very perceptive. They know when in this case, they know when their parents are in a good mood or in a bad mood. So they're able to perceive, not from anybody telling them, oh, I'm in a good mood or I'm in a bad mood, but from the subtle clues that their parents give them. In the second example, the professor was very perceptive in that she was able to notice if a student seemed to be having some sort of stressful situation. Again, not because the student came up and told them, but just because she was able to see the signs that suggested that the student was under stress. All right, and our last one is sedate. And again, this one didn't follow our pattern, but it is an adjective. While the officer wrote out the ticket, Beverly remained sedate, and then she even wished him a pleasant day. But after he left, she pounded the steering wheel and screamed, "Why me?" An experienced surgeon, Dr. Greenbaum, remained sedate even in an emergency, performing the most complicated operations with complete self-control. And sedate is calm. On page 107, it's number 2, calm and dignified, serious and unemotional. So sedate A word that you may know that's related to this is the word sedative, and a sedative is a drug that you take to relax you. Oftentimes in medicine, it's used, to a sedative is used to put someone under, meaning it makes them go to sleep or something like that. So what sedate means is that it lowers your energy. If something is sedate or someone is being sedate, it means that they have a low energy, calm energy, a relaxed, not getting excited, not getting super angry, and also not getting super depressed, but just being very calm and we would say level-headed. In the picture, it has a picture of a sedate setting, so this is sort of a calm, peaceful, peaceful setting. Okay, so let's take a look here because we have some time at the sentence check over on page 108. So number one, for his psychology experiment, Rudy is gathering blank to show which memory aids work best for students. So here he's doing an experiment. What kind of thing do you get from an experiment, the thing that you write down? I'm so blank at bowling that I usually roll the bowl straight into the gutter. So the bowling, this person is so bad at bowling that they don't even hit any of the pins at the end. The ball goes into the side, which is called the gutter. So the first word is data, right? He's collecting information. And the second one, the person's so inept, is so unskillful at it that they can't even get the ball down the lane. The child had nightmares he listened to, pardon me, the child had nightmares after he listened to a blank story about Dracula that was full of attacks by vampires. Now here the meaning is a little bit different than what I was saying, but Dracula is a vampire. There's violence, attacks, there's death. What word would describe that kind of story? While my dog gets excited easily, my cat remains blank, even when everyone around her is a whirl of activities. So here we have a contrast. The dog is very excited easily, but in contrast, how does the cat? If the cat is not excited, how would you describe her? When you frame a picture, the picture's edge should be blank to those of the frame, not dipping down or slanting up. So when you're putting a picture in a picture frame, you want the edges to be the same level and distance as the frame. So the first one is morbid, right? So this one about these attacks. The second one's going to be sedate. The cat's very calm. And the last one is parallel. Kwan is so blank that she often correctly judges a person's character after a brief conversation. So how would you describe a person who can just talk to someone for a very short amount of time and then understand what that person's character or personality is like? When children get into a fight, it's sometimes best not to blank, but to let them work it out for themselves. So here we have people fighting, so we're saying it's best not to get involved, but let them work it out. So what word does that mean, to get involved? So the first one's perceptive, right? She can judge a person's character so quickly without additional information, right? Not just a brief conversation. And in the second one, it's better not to influence them, or sorry, better not to intervene, to get in the way. Okay, Shauna tried to persuade her son to join the family for dinner, but he was blank, refusing to leave his room no matter what she said. So it didn't matter what she said, he was unwilling to change his mind. He was totally stubborn about not doing the thing that she wanted him to do. People all over the United States blanked the death of Martin Luther King Jr., who's now honored with the national holiday on his birthday. So some person died, a famous person died, everybody was sad about it. What word talks about that? Richard's gift for fixing machines seems blank. Even as a child, he could take one look at a broken machine and know what was wrong with this. So this is saying that even before he got any education, even when he was very small, he was able to fix things. So how would you describe his skill or his gift for fixing things? So the first one's obstinate. He's so stubborn he won't leave the room. Second one is lamented, right? People were very sad and they mourned the death. And the last one was innate. This is an ability that he was born with, or it seems to be born with. All right, so that's it. So go ahead and do the online activities. Do the questions. We'll go over those in class, and we'll see you then. Take care. Bye.